"This old Subaru's embarrassing our family," my brother Jonathan shouted across the valet circle at the Seaside Yacht Club in Newport, Rhode Island. "Get a real car or don't show up again." I glanced down at the keys in my hand, then back at my silver 2015 Subaru Outback. It wasn't rusty, I took excellent care of it, but it definitely looked out of place among the Teslas, Bentleys, and Maseratis gleaming under the summer sun. During our family's monthly brunch, "The car runs fine, Jonathan," I said evenly. "That's not the point," he snapped, his face red with embarrassment. "Do you see what everyone else drives? People judge us on appearances." Our sister Isabella nodded from beside her black Mercedes G-Wagon. "Maya, you're 33 years old. It's time to act like it. Upgrade your life." "What life?" Jonathan scoffed. "She's still working at that tiny startup making barely enough to cover rent," he smirked. "At her age, I was already driving a McLaren and closing deals in Manhattan." Let me back up and explain how we got here. Our monthly brunch at the Seaside Yacht Club had started 2 hours earlier and had gone downhill from the second I parked my car. Dad was standing near the entrance, checking his Patek Philippe like he was timing a race. "Maya, 20 minutes late." "Sorry, Dad, I was finishing a client call." "Another one of your app projects?" Isabella's voice dripped with sarcasm as she approached in a $3,000 0-cent sundress and diamond earrings. "How's your little coding hobby?" "I run a software development firm," I replied evenly. "Right," Jonathan chuckled, adjusting his custom Italian suit. "Charity work for tech nerds. When are you going to start a real career?" Inside the club, the interrogation only got worse. We sat at our usual table in the glass-walled dining room overlooking the harbor, surrounded by the city's elite. The Whitmores were 2 tables over, the family that practically owned half the marina. The Ellisons, who controlled 3 luxury hotels, were sipping mimosas near the bar. Across the room sat the Callahans, surgeons who'd built a private clinic empire. "Look around, Maya," Mom said quietly, gesturing at the room filled with wealth. "These are successful people. Their children drive respectable cars, live in the right neighborhoods, wear the right brands." "I live in a perfectly good apartment," I murmured. Jonathan laughed coldly. "In Brooklyn, over a coffee shop, that's cute." "A starter loft in Portland?" Isabella had scoffed. "That's where recent grads live before they figure out what real success looks like." "Some of us care more about owning our space than impressing strangers," I replied calmly, stirring my coffee. That's when Jonathan really started in. "Debt-free? Maya, you're 33. You should be building wealth, not just dodging bills. You should be investing in real assets, not scraping by." "I am investing," I said evenly. "In what? Your Subaru?" Isabella laughed sharply. "That thing belongs in a history museum." "It's 7 years old and it runs perfectly," I said, a bit sharper than intended. Dad sighed, shaking his head with theatrical disappointment. "Sweetheart, we're trying to help you understand something important. Success isn't about being comfortable. It's about building something that commands respect. Like Jonathan has." Jonathan smirked. "Exactly. I'm a managing partner at Women in Row. I bill $450 0 cents an hour, drive a McLaren, and close deals overlooking Central Park from my penthouse. Next month, I'm closing on a villa in Santorini." "And me," Isabella chimed in. "I own 2 luxury spas and a fashion boutique in Soho. Last year, my businesses cleared $1,800,000 0 cents." "That's impressive," I said sincerely. Mom smiled, encouraged. "Now, Maya, tell them what you do." "I run programs that teach advanced tech skills to underprivileged kids," I said simply. The table fell silent, and the hum of conversations from other elite families filled the Seaside Yacht Club dining room. Deals worth millions were being discussed at the tables nearby. The Whitmores, real estate moguls, waved at my father. The Ellisons were bragging about their hotel acquisition across the room. "That's nice," Dad finally said. "But what's your 5-year plan? What are you building toward?" "I'm building toward a future where kids without resources can still learn the skills that matter," I replied. Jonathan sighed dramatically. "Maya, that's not a business plan. That's charity work with good intentions. I disagree, I said firmly. Look, it's admirable that you want to help people, Isabella added with that polished condescension she wore like perfume. But you can't spend your life as a volunteer. You need to think about your future, retirement, legacy, your impact. I believe I'm making an impact, I said. By what metric? Jonathan shot back. How many people do you employ? What's your tax contribution? Your economic footprint? I opened my mouth to answer, but Dad cut in smoothly. Sweetheart, we're worried. Teaching coding basics is noble, but it's not sustainable as a career. Why not? I asked. Because nonprofits don't pay well, Mom said patiently, as if explaining gravity. Because you're not building any equity or ownership, Jonathan pressed, his voice heavy with that practiced superiority. You're limiting yourself to scraps, whatever grants and donations you can beg for. That's when Mrs. Whitmore strolled over from the next table, her diamond bracelets catching the sunlight streaming through the yacht club windows. She smiled warmly at my parents. Pritchard, Elaine, how lovely to see you both. And Jonathan, congratulations on making senior partner. The mayor was just raving about the brilliant work you did on that downtown redevelopment deal. Jonathan beamed. Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore. It was a challenging transaction, but we structured it well for all parties. And Isabella, Mrs. Whitmore turned with her signature socialite charm. I absolutely adore your spa concept. The press coverage was fabulous. Thank you, Isabella gushed. We're actually launching a luxury skincare line next quarter. Then her attention turned to me, with that polite interest wealthy people reserve for those they assume are unremarkable. And Maya, your parents are always so proud. What field are you in? The table went silent. I felt my family tense as though bracing for impact. I work in educational technology, I said evenly. Oh, fascinating. Are you with one of the big firms downtown? I work independently, focusing on underserved communities. How wonderful, she said sweetly. It's so important to give back. I floated back to her table, my family's eyes turned on me, filled with thinly veiled pity. Do you see the problem? Isabella asked. When people ask about your career, you give vague answers. That's not impressive. I wasn't apologetic, I replied. You said you work independently, Jonathan sneered. That's code for unemployed. I'm not unemployed. Not exactly employed either, Dad added, his tone like a gavel striking. You're hopping from grant to grant, no stability, no scalability, no business model. The conversation dragged on for an hour, each comment like a chisel chipping away at my choices. My income was inadequate, my apartment laughable, my car, a 7-year-old Subaru, proof of failure. The final blow landed as we exited into the cool ocean breeze. At least promise us you'll consider changes, Mom pleaded, adjusting her pearl necklace as we walked to the valet. What kind of changes? I asked. Get a real job with a real company, Jonathan said sharply. Something in corporate strategy or tech consulting. Use your skills for something that pays. And for God's sake, Isabella added with a smirk, buy a car that doesn't make people feel sorry for you. That's when Jonathan lost it over my Subaru, loud enough for everyone at the Seaside Yacht Club valet circle to turn and stare. Now, 30 minutes later, I was heading home along Ocean Drive, his crimson McLaren flashing in my rearview mirror like an angry signal. Clearly my brother wasn't done. He was probably crafting one last lecture on responsibility and realistic expectations as he tailed me. I turned into my neighborhood, Shoreline Park, a quiet middle-class pocket of Newport, Rhode Island. The houses here weren't waterfront mansions. They were tidy 2-story homes with porches and flower beds. Exactly the kind of place Jonathan and Isabella mocked when they were feeling especially superior. As I pulled into my driveway, Jonathan rolled in behind me, shaking his head at my modest colonial with its blue shutters and brick walkway. It wasn't impressive. It wasn't designed to wow dinner guests at the yacht club. It was just home. Jonathan slammed his McLaren door and strode toward me, radiating self-importance. Maya, we need to finish this conversation. What conversation? The one about your future, about making better choices. He gestured broadly at my house. Look at this place. It's fine for someone starting out, but you've been here 4 years. When are you moving up? When are you going to build real equity? I own this house outright, Jonathan. That's not the point, he snapped. The point is growth, progression, showing the world you're succeeding. His eyes flicked toward my Subaru, parked in the driveway, a scowl tugging at his lips. And that car? It has to go. I don't care if it runs fine, it makes you look like you're struggling. I'm not struggling. Then prove it. Show me one thing in your life that demonstrates success. One thing that says you're building wealth instead of just scraping by. I studied my brother, the man who measured life in status symbols and thought worth was reflected in horsepower. Since you're so worried about cars, I said evenly, want to see my collection? He snorted. What, you have 2 Subarus hidden somewhere? I pressed the garage remote. The door began to rise with deliberate slowness. These, I said, as the interior came into view, are my weekend cars. Inside the 3-car garage gleamed a midnight blue Lamborghini Huracan Evo, a silver Aston Martin DB11, and a black Ferrari 488 GTB. Combined value roughly $750,000. 0 cents. Jonathan froze, his carefully rehearsed speech evaporating as his jaw fell open. And if you think that was the biggest shock of the night, you'll want to stick around for what happens next. Subscribe now, you won't believe where this story goes. What? How? Where did you get these? Jonathan's voice cracked as he stared at the Lamborghini's polished curves. I bought them, I said calmly, running my fingers along the Ferrari's flawless finish. With what money? You make what, 35 grand a year working for that charity? You're right about one thing, I replied, turning to face him. I work with underserved kids. What you don't know is, I don't work for a nonprofit. I own several. His brows shot up. You own them. Future Pathways Alliance, Digital Horizons Initiative, TechBridge Foundation, I listed smoothly. Together, we serve over 20,000 students across 19 states. Jonathan blinked, struggling to connect the dots. That still doesn't explain this, he said, waving at the cars. These foundations are funded by my primary business, I said, pulling out my phone. The one you've mocked for years as my little computer project. I opened an app and held it up for him to see. Digital Learning Dynamics. We design advanced educational platforms for schools, Fortune 500 companies, and government agencies. He swallowed hard. How much are we talking? Last year, $67,300,000, 0 cents in revenue. Net profit? $31,800,000, 0 cents. We have active contracts with 1,200 school districts, 95 corporations, and 10 federal agencies. Jonathan stumbled back, bracing himself on the McLaren like it was the only solid thing left in his world. 67 million? Popped the hood on the Lamborghini, its V10 engine gleaming like a trophy. This car? $267,000, 0 cents, paid cash. Same with the Aston Martin, $198,000, 0 cents. And the Ferrari, $280,000, 0 cents. And this house? I gestured around us. Bought outright, renovated last year. He looked around like he was seeing it for the first time. The custom stone driveway, the manicured landscaping, the oversized, climate-controlled garage. Maya, I don't understand. If you have this kind of money, why live so ordinary? Because I value substance over appearances, I said simply. Because I'd rather invest in businesses that change lives than in trying to impress yacht club gossip circles. The Subaru? It's practical, fuel efficient, and doesn't make me a target for theft. I walked him to the side of the garage and pointed through a glass wall into my home office. Inside, rows of sleek monitors glowed against the soft LED lighting. Servers hummed in a climate-controlled rack. Equipment worth more than most luxury homes lined the space. This, I said, smiling faintly, is what success looks like to me. This, I said quietly, motioning to the glowing wall of monitors beyond the glass, is where I built Digital Learning Dynamics. This is where I manage contracts worth tens of millions. This is where I design programs transforming how kids learn technology. Jonathan pressed his face against the window, his breath fogging the glass as he stared at the high-tech command center. But you never said anything. You let us all think you were just doing charity work. I am doing charity work, I corrected. That's the part you don't understand. My business generates enough profit that I can fund massive educational programs while still building wealth. My phone buzzed on the counter. Dr. Sarah Chin, Harvard University. Excuse me, I said, swiping to answer. Hello, Dr. Chin. Maya, excellent news, her voice chimed through the speaker. The university board just approved your proposal. Harvard will implement digital learning dynamics across all computer science and education programs next semester. Jonathan's jaw dropped as he read the caller ID glowing on my screen. That's fantastic, Dr. Chin, I said smoothly. What's the contract value? $12,700,000, 0 cents over 4 years with automatic renewal options, she replied. It'll be the largest educational technology contract in Harvard's history. I'm honored, I said. We'll begin customization immediately. When the call ended, Jonathan looked at me like I'd just revealed I was an astronaut. You just signed a $12 million 0 cents deal. With Harvard. Of many, I said, picking up my tablet and scrolling through dashboards. We also have contracts with Stanford, MIT, Yale, Princeton, pretty much every Ivy, plus major state systems, community colleges, private academies. He sank onto the decorative stone wall like his knees had given out. Education is a $750 billion 0 cents industry, I continued. Tech spending in education grows 15% annually. Here, a look. I turned the screen toward him. These are our current active contracts. Total value, $347 million, 0 cents over the next 5 years. Jonathan made a sound like air leaving a balloon. 347 million? In confirmed contracts, yes, I said. Pending proposals, $89 million 0 cents. Renewal options, $156 million 0 cents. His face had gone pale. Maya, how long have you been doing this? Started digital learning dynamics 9 years ago. The summer after I graduated, MIT. His head jerked up. MIT? You went to MIT? Ride. Masters in Computer Science, specializing in educational technology. Jonathan groaned, dropping his head into his hands. We thought you went to State. Because every time I tried to tell you, I said coolly, Dad cut me off to brag about your law school graduation, no one ever asked again. I walked over to the Aston Martin and opened the door with a click. Want to see the rest of the property? There are some things you might find interesting. Jonathan blinked, still trying to process the sight of 3 supercars in my garage. There's more? Oh, plenty. I slid into the driver's seat, pressed the start button, and the engine roared like a beast breaking free. The sound shattered the quiet evening, probably making the neighbors peek out their windows. I gestured for him to follow in his McLaren. We cruised along the curved stone driveway to the back of my property. Behind the main house, nestled among old maples, stood what looked like a sleek modern guest house. What's that? Jonathan asked, pulling off his sunglasses, even though the sun had dipped. My primary development facility, I replied. The home office is for admin work. This is where the real magic happens. I tapped my key card. The glass door slid open to reveal a state-of-the-art tech lab that could rival a Silicon Valley headquarters. The space gleamed with rows of high-performance servers, advanced workstations, testing rigs, and prototype stations. This lab cost $3,800,000 0 cents to build and equip, I said casually. We design, build, and stress test every software solution here before deployment. Jonathan walked in slowly, his head turning like he'd stepped onto another planet. You built a $3,800,000 0 cents lab behind your house? I needed a secure R&D environment, I said with a shrug. Leasing commercial real estate? Less secure, less efficient, and more expensive long-term. He stopped dead in front of a massive wall. It wasn't art. It was recognition. Framed patents, innovation awards, and certificates from organizations most people only read about in the news. "What are all these?" he whispered. "Patents for our adaptive learning algorithms, awards from the Department of Education, the National Science Foundation, global innovation forums, and yes," I nodded toward a large photo, "that's me with the Secretary of Education." Jonathan scanned the plaques. Outstanding contribution to educational technology, Entrepreneur of the Year, Innovation Leadership Award. His throat worked as if he were swallowing gravel. "Maya, why didn't you ever show us this?" "When would I have?" I asked lightly, logging into a console. "Every family gathering you and Isabella spent hours flaunting your deals while dismissing mine as charity work." My dashboard flickered alive with real-time metrics. Currently, 1.3 million students are using our platforms across 18 countries. Today's revenue alone? About $290,000, 0 cents per day. Jonathan stared at the scrolling numbers like they were written in another language. "And the charitable work?" I asked, pulling up another dashboard on the screen. "Future Pathways Foundation has donated $18,700,000, 0 cents to educational programs over the last 5 years. We've built 47 computer labs in underserved schools, provided full college scholarships to 156 students, and trained more than 800 teachers in advanced tech skills." Jonathan blinked hard. $18,700,000, 0 cents? "Indirect giving, yes," I said evenly, "plus another $23 million, 0 cents, in donated software licenses and consulting hours." He fell silent, just absorbing the scale of what I'd built. Finally, he whispered, "The yacht club? When Mrs. Whitmore asked about your work and you said educational technology?" "I was being accurate," I replied. "I do work in educational technology." "You made it sound so small, so unimportant." "I made it sound honest," I said simply. "I don't feel the need to announce my net worth over cocktails." His head jerked up. "Your net worth? What is it?" I considered the question. "Between business valuation, real estate, investments, and liquid assets? Roughly $94 million, 0 cents. Jonathan made a choking sound. $94 million? "It fluctuates," I said with a shrug. "Market's performance. But yes, that's the current estimate." He sank into a chair like gravity had doubled. "We'd been treating you like a charity case." "You've been treating me like someone whose work doesn't matter because it doesn't flaunt status symbols." My phone buzzed. I glanced at the text and smiled faintly. "What now?" Jonathan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Department of Defense," I said casually. "They want to explore adapting our technology for military training. Potential contract value, $47 million, 0 cents. His mouth fell open. "The Pentagon wants to hire you?" "Training tech and education tech share the same backbone," I explained. "Our adaptive algorithms could revolutionize military readiness." I showed him the text, a formal request for a strategy call with senior defense officials. This deal would be our first defense contract, an entirely new market segment. Jonathan turned in a slow circle, taking in the patents, the servers, the $1 million lab. For the first time, I saw something unfamiliar in his expression. Respect. "And you were scrolling Instagram at Sunday dinners," I said softly. "I was reviewing multi-million-dollar proposals, and when you told me to stop playing with computers, you were telling a CEO to walk away from a business making more in a month than most people make in a lifetime." We walked back toward the garage, where the Lamborghini, Ferrari, and Aston Martin gleamed like silent witnesses to every wrong assumption he'd ever made. "Maya," he said hoarsely, "I owe you the biggest apology of my life." "Yes," I said, meeting his eyes. "You do." "We've been completely wrong," Jonathan admitted, his voice low. "About your work, your success, everything. We were so obsessed with what success looks like on the outside, we never bothered to find out what it actually is on the inside." His eyes flicked to his scarlet McLaren, which suddenly looked like a toy next to the Lamborghini, Ferrari, and Aston Martin lined up in my garage. My Subaru, I said with a faint smile. Practical daily transportation. Doesn't make me a theft target. And when I want performance driving, I gestured toward the gleaming lineup. I have options. And your house. Paid in full, I said evenly. Customized for privacy and security, essential for running a multi-million-dollar tech business. As a business, he swallowed hard. And your clothes. Comfortable, functional. I don't need designer labels to validate my worth. Before he could respond, my phone rang. Janet Rodriguez, CFO. Hi, Janet, I said, answering on speaker. Maya, final Q4 numbers. Revenue $21,400,000, 0 cents, up 43% from last quarter. Net profit $12,800,000, 0 cents. Jonathan's jaw practically hit the marble floor. Excellent, I said calmly. What's our cash position? $31,700,000, 0 cents in liquid assets, plus $18 million, 0 cents in the expansion fund. Perfect. Go ahead and authorize the East Coast facility. Already underway, Janet replied. Boston Development Center will be fully operational by March. I ended the call. Jonathan stared at me like I'd just rewritten the definition of reality. $31 million in cash? Operating capital, I said lightly. We maintain strong liquidity for expansions and large-scale projects. And you're opening another facility? Our third. The main lab here, secondary in Austin, now Boston. East Coast presence will help us serve Ivy League clients more efficiently. Jonathan sat heavily on the stone steps, his designer suit creasing under the weight of revelation. Maya, how do we even begin to make this right? After years of treating you like a failure while you were building an empire. I considered his question, the ocean breeze cool against my skin. Start by understanding this. Success wears many faces. Stop judging worth by cars or clothes. Recognize that real achievement doesn't always shout. He nodded slowly. And acknowledge this. Helping kids access technology isn't just noble, it's essential. The students we empower today will be the innovators of tomorrow. Done? He whispered. And one more thing, I added with a small grin. Stop being embarrassed by my Subaru. It gets excellent mileage. Jonathan laughed. The first genuine laugh I'd heard from him all day. I promise never to complain about your Subaru again, Jonathan said, managing a sheepish smile. My phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. Jonathan, what's taking so long? Did you finish explaining to Maya why she needs to get her life together? I turned the screen toward him. What should I tell her? He asked, half laughing, half mortified. Tell her, I said calmly, that I'll be happy to discuss my life choices at next month's family gathering. And tell her, I glanced at the cars gleaming in my garage, I might drive something different to the yacht club next time. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. Which one? I haven't decided yet, I replied, running a hand over the Lamborghini's sleek hood. Maybe this one. It's been a while since I took it out for a proper drive. He stared at the lineup. Lamborghini Huracan Evo, Ferrari 488 GTB, Aston Martin DB11. 3 machines worth close to $750,000, resting quietly in a climate-controlled garage behind my modest Colonial. The family is going to be shocked, he said finally. Good, I said simply. Maybe next time they'll ask questions before making assumptions. As Jonathan turned to leave, he hesitated at the steps, his voice softer than I'd heard it in years. Maya, can I ask you something personal? Sure. When I was shouting about your car, about your life, what were you thinking? I smiled, remembering my exact thought 3 hours ago in that parking lot. I was thinking you cared more about impressing strangers at a yacht club than understanding your own sister's accomplishments. And now, I met his gaze, calm and steady. Now I'm thinking maybe this family can finally learn to value substance over appearances. He nodded slowly, walked back to his McLaren, which somehow seemed far less imposing now. Maya, he said again, hand on the door. Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we gave up on you. I said nothing, just watched as his taillights disappeared down Shoreline Park Drive, the evening breeze carrying the distant hum of his engine. Moments later, my phone exploded with calls. Isabella first, then Mom, then Dad. Clearly, Jonathan had made some urgent phone calls on his way home. I let every call go to voicemail. Tomorrow would be soon enough for those conversations about respect, success, and the difference between looking wealthy and actually being wealthy. Tonight? Tonight was for me. I walked back into the garage, slid into the Ferrari, and pressed the ignition. The engine roared to life, a low, thrilling growl vibrating through my bones. I lowered the windows, feeling the cool Atlantic air rush in as I pulled onto the open road. Because when you've built a $94 million 0-cents empire by age 33, while funding programs that have changed 20,000 children's lives, you've earned the right to enjoy your success, even if you prefer to keep it quietly parked behind a modest home in Newport. And tonight, for once, I wasn't going to keep it quiet. If you've read this far, I want to hear from you. What do you think about everything I went through? The years of judgment, the assumptions, the quiet work that no one valued until now. Leave me a comment below and tell me. Have you ever been underestimated by people who were supposed to believe in you? Have you ever had to prove that success isn't always loud and flashy? I'd love your support, because stories like mine aren't just about me. They're about everyone who's been told they're not enough simply because they didn't fit someone else's definition of success. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that their worth isn't measured by luxury cars or designer clothes. And if you want to see more stories that flip the script on judgment and expectations, make sure to subscribe. Trust me, the next chapter will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about appearances versus reality. And here's the advice I wish someone had given me years ago. Stop living for validation. Success isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Build something meaningful, even if no one notices at first. The world rewards persistence and innovation, not noise. Remember, the people who mock you today might be the same ones asking for advice tomorrow. And when that day comes, don't seek revenge. Seek respect. Quiet confidence and undeniable results speak louder than any argument you'll ever have. So tell me in the comments, what does success look like to you? And what's one goal you're working on that others might not understand right now? Let's build a community that celebrates substance over appearances.